would be a question and answer segment at the end of the discussion session. If you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourselves and ask. Please use the raise hand feature also in order to maintain the queue. If you are not speaking, please mute yourselves in order to minimize the disturbances. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupini avatara varisthaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. We are continuing our discussion on this very interesting topic, RāMANUJA'S philosophy. So at the very beginning I clearly mentioned that RāMANUJA'S system is more of a system of theology than a spiritual philosophy. God, as he defines and as understood in his system, is the most dominant theme in RāMANUJA. So in many ways it is very similar to the mainstream theological systems of Abrahamic tradition. A supreme creator God as an anthropomorphic system. Of course, there are glimpses of mystical insights going beyond the anthropomorphic interpretation of Godhead, as you find in many of the mystical ideas within Judaism or in Sufism, and also, of course, in some of the most sublime aspects of Christian philosophical systems, theological systems like Meister Eckhart. But predominantly the mainstream system is more of a theological system. So RāMANUJA comes very close to that. Now, actually he makes it very clear, and his own ideas on yoga, for example, he says, you may practice yamas and niyamas, you may practice chitta vritti nirodha as defined by Patanjali. But unless you have the grace of God, unless you pray to and meditate upon the Supreme Person, it's called Purushottama, or Shiva Narayana, you cannot reach the highest goal in spiritual life. So even Jnana-nishtha, which finds its place in RāMANUJA's system, cannot be complete and cannot be fruitful without focusing on this supreme ideal. And also, of course, he makes it very clear when he talks about karma yoga. In some ways, he comes very close to Advaitins. For example, there's a verse in the Gita, the 3rd chapter, a very famous verse. Na karmanam anarambha naishkarmyam purishosnade naja sanyasina deva siddhim samadhi gacchati. So what it essentially means is, by not doing any work, by not starting any work, anarambhat, no. By doing nothing, you cannot attain Jnana-nishtha. And that is true in Shankaracharya's system also. But Jnana-nishtha transcends karma in Shankara's system. But RāMANUJA's system, Jnana-nishtha will not and cannot transcend bhakti. Because Jnana-nishtha is still fruitful. It can be fruitful only if it takes bhakti along with that. Karma-nishtha is necessary in Advaita system. Karma-nishtha is very important. That is the first step for every spiritual person. Do your duty with all sense of sanctity and sacredness, with full focus, without any desire, without any expectation of any results. And then what happens? At some point, if we keep doing this, what happens? At some point, what Patanjali calls vritti nirodha happens. So Patanjali's yoga or chitta vritti nirodha is nothing but what Shankaracharya calls chitta shuddhi, purity of mind. But for RāMANUJA, Karmanistha alone cannot give you purity of mind. It should be accompanied by dhyanam or meditation, prayer, and actually the early stage of prapatti. So prapatti has got two dimensions. Prapatti is bhakti, where is sadhana, and prapatti is sadhya as ultimate destination, which of course the last word. Anugulyasya sankalpa pradigulyasya varjanam rakshasridhi vishwasa goptrutva varandha atma niksheba karpanne shadvidha sharanagati. So atma niksheba is the central, the anki, and there are 5 angas. Anugulyasya sankalpaka pradigulyasya varjanam rakshasridhi vishwasa goptrutva varanam and karpanne. So that means focusing on ideas, thought currents, emotions and feelings, understanding which is positive, which is conducive to development of prapatti or self-surrender, and avoiding, disregarding, rejecting all the contrary vrittis and emotions and feelings which go against the spiritual evolution of a devotee, and then a strong faith that God will protect me, and looking upon God as the one single only protector. Goptrutva varanam. The Gopta is only Sriman Narayana. And then Karpanyam, a sense of total helplessness, becoming oneself a destitute. When you reach this state, then Atmanikshepa becomes a fact. Actually, strictly speaking, it is a state of spiritual evolution if you travel the path of devotion. And remember, this prapatti and its elaborate interpretations in Vedanta Desika's books or in the Suti Prakashika of Sudarsana Suri. In fact, in the Rahasyatraya, Vedanta Desika, and he quotes from Lakshmi Tantra and other auxiliary books. There is a very elaborate and very articulate interpretation and description of this prapatti. And this prapatti is the last point. But that actually is a state of individual spiritual evolution. When it becomes a social concept, and here I wanted to refer to a few interesting points because this should be properly understood. Self-surrender to God, just as Chitta Vritti Nirodha in Patanjali system, these are all essentially a way of individual spiritual practice, adhyalmika sadhana, means in Sanskrit. Individual spiritual evolution. That must have the state reached by Christ, that's the state must have been reached by St. Francis of Assisi, St. Teresa of Avila, so maybe the great devotee mentioned the pilgrim in the way of a pilgrim, and also in the writings of Eulocalia, but they may not have called the name prapatti as articulated using a specific vocabulary in the RāMāNUJA system. But it's an inevitable, unavoidable spiritual attainment that happens to any sincere devotee who practices pratyahara and dharana. That means taking our senses and mind away from all external objects, focusing them all onto God, and then meditating and engaging in different kinds of spiritual disciplines. When it reaches its fruition, for an individual sadhaka, it becomes prapatti or sharanagati as defined by RāMāNUJA in Sharanagati Gadyam, is one of the Gadyatrayas, and also by Vedanta Desika in so many of his works. But it is not, and is not meant to be a way of life for an entire society or an entire nation. Just like Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. See, you can have 1,000 people practicing yoga asanas, absolutely wonderful. But you cannot have 1,000 people reaching samadhi simultaneously. It is not a sports or a game, or it is not just a military formation or a training in a ground and infantry division. It is something that every individual should attain as part of spiritual evolution. If it is imposed upon a society or a people, it can be different. I can give an example. And this example is from the life of RāMANUJA'S, one of RāMANUJA'S staunchest and one of the greatest philosophers and theologians of the Viśiṣṭādvaita tradition belonging to post-RāMANUJA period. His name is Venkatanatha or Vedanta Deshika. One of the foremost philosophers of Sri Vaishnava system, RāMANUJA system. I mentioned this some time earlier. RāMANUJA was forced to flee from his native place and go to a place called Melkote in today's Karnataka, and there he established a Krishna temple. And also his influence as a great devotee of God, as a great mystic, as a man who always thought of God, it became well known, it became widespread. After some years, maybe I think around in the early decades of 14th century, something terrible happened. The temple where RāMANUJA lived and practiced Kainkaryam, seva, the Tirtha Kainkaryam, all that he practiced under the instruction of his own teachers. That temple was invaded by a ruthless invader, Malik Kafur, who was a general of Alauddin Khilji, belonging to Khilji dynasty. And the temple was destroyed. It is said almost 12,000 priests tried to defend the temple by standing there in line, but they were all massacred. Then the temple was ransacked. The temple is such a huge granite structure, so no one can destroy it. But whatever they could do, they did at that time. So, and then Vedanta Deshika was trying to escape from the place, but he had just one copy of Suti Prakashika, which is a well-known book written by Sudarsana Suri. According to some scholars, it is the work of a group of scholars, but it is attributed to Sudarsana Suri, a great philosopher. It's a commentary on RāMANUJA'S commentary on Brahma Sutras. That is, it's a commentary on Sri Bhashya. So, this man, this great saint, Vedanta Deshika was a great Vaishnava, a great saint, a real prapanna. Somebody who has dedicated himself to the grace and will of the Lord, Sri Ranganatha. And when this massacre was happening, he fell down and he was clutching this single, only surviving copy of Suti Prakashika, and he died. I mean, he did not die, he laid there as if he is dead, like among the corpses and dead bodies. So the invaders came and thought this man is dead, they left him free. But later on he got up and of course he escaped, the book survived. Just before that something else happened. As he was going, trying to escape with this single book, Suti Prakashika, which Sudarsana Suri had requested him to preserve for the posterity. A few of the Vaishnavites in the locality, they got some crude weapons and were trying to organize to defend the temple. Vedanta Deshika told them, you don't do that because you have completely surrendered yourself to God. And they were all, of course, massacred, genocide. Now what it means is, so the question arises, a great mystical ideal should not ever become a national ideal for an entire society or a social ideal. It never happens. When the same idea is preached as a social ideal, then you have to listen to what Lord Krishna teaches in the Bhagavad Gita. Because the message in the Gita is meant for the individual, if it meant for the family, for society, and also for nation. But the yama, niyama, pranayama, all these are not meant for an entire society or nation. This is a very important thing to remember. I'm just giving an example. So anyway, this is an important thing to remember, So now Ramanuja's system, as I mentioned, emphasizes meditation and sadhana and puja and seva to the supreme seva, I mean the spiritual service to the supreme Purushottama. So he says in one context, he agrees with Advaitins, and he's very, very, very logical in this context. He says, Na shastriyanam karmanam anarambhadeva purusho naishkarmyam jnananishtham prapnoti. So no one can attain jnananishtha just by not doing any work or just by not starting any work. Nacha arabdasya shastriyanam karmanam tyagad. And also not by giving up the work that you already started. Certain obligatory responsibilities that a person may have to take care of himself, take care of his family, take care of society. Just giving up, just running away from it, which is what Arjuna was trying to do in the Bhagavad Gita. He was actually trying to run away from duty. And Krishna caught him by the throat, by the collar, and forced him to do his duty. That's all about Bhagavad Gita. A man who was essentially a great warrior, a brave man, trying to run away from this field of duty, pretending to be a practitioner of Jnana-nishtha. But Krishna told him, no, you have to do your duty. And Ramanuja agrees with that in this particular book, By not giving up any work or your duty, you cannot become either a prapanna or a jnana-nishthavan. Yataha anabhisamhita phalasya parama purusharadhana vishesya karmanaka siddhigi syad. So, this jnana-nishtha is the result of karma performed as worship of Parama Purusha or Purushottama, or in this context, Sriman Narayana. So, this Jnana-nishtha is the result of karma, sadhana, spiritual disciplines performed with great dedication as the service of the Lord. Of course, here remember, there is one difference here. There is a very important difference between Advaita and Ramanuja system. Advaitins make it very clear that Atmajnanam or moksha is not the result of any activity. But Viśiṣṭādvaitins tell you that yataha anabhisamhita phalasya parama purusharadhana vishayasya karmanaka siddhi syad. Ataha tena vina tam na prapnodi. Because the jnana-nishtha itself is the result of karma, duties and responsibilities, rituals, performed as worship. Everything should be done as a worship of the Lord, without any attachment. That is anabhisamhita phalasya. Without any attachment to the result, the fruit of the action. Without this karma, no one can attain jnana-nishtha. But in Shankara's system, karma is important because karma helps you to go beyond karma. And that intermediary stage is called chitta shuddhi or purity of mind. So when you go on doing all your duties and responsibilities without any desire, then new vrittis and vasanas and samskaras are not generated in our mind, mental system, chitta. And old vasanas and samskaras and tendencies and impressions from previous life cycles and from this life itself, they get neutralized by chitta shuddhi. So, any kind of spiritual discipline performed without any desire will have these twofold effects. One, it neutralizes or it purifies, it cleanses the mind of all previously accumulated tendencies and impressions. And it does not any longer generate any fresh samskaras and vrittis. So mind becomes pure. In the means, mind becomes free of, empty of any vrittis. Chitta vritti nirodha, what Patanjali calls it. That is exactly chitta shuddhi or mental purity. And then what happens is, you discover your own true nature. The chitta vrittis, impressions and vasanas constituted by avidya is responsible for our not recognizing or realizing our true nature. We wrongly, due to avidya and adhyasa, we wrongly think that we are just this body, mind, system, nothing more. We are Atman. And that's because of these accumulated tendencies and impressions and vasanas and samskaras. When they are gone completely, what happens is, we discover our own true nature. But RāMāNUJā system, that is actually Jnananistha or Prapatti is nothing but the result of seva, service, worship, rituals performed for the Lord. Now there is a reason why in Advaita that there is an emphasis on this point, that is moksha or liberation or ultimate spiritual realization cannot be the result, what you call a phalam, the result of any karma. Because there is one rule, anything that is a result of a karma should be for that very reason impermanent. Mokshasya akaryatva, statement in the Bhashya. Moksha, liberation, is not the karyam, not the result, not the effect of any action, any karana. See, a pot is a result of, let's say, it is caused by the clay. And of course, the pot maker is there, but the upadana karanam, the material cause is clay. A golden ring is the result of gold. That's the upadana karana, material cause. The jewelry person, the man who makes it, may be the efficient cause, what you call nimitta karanam. But primarily, the relationship between a clay pot and clay is the relationship between an effect and a cause, karyam and karanam. So you cannot say this pot is permanent, because before the pot maker made the pot, there was no pot, only clay. After it is broken, again there is no more the pot, there is only clay. Then why do you say then the clay is sitting in front of you on your table, there is anything other than clay? That also is clay, nothing but clay in the form of a particular form, that is ghada rupa, and with a specific name, ghada, that is pot. So, in other words, it is impermanent. So, if moksha is the result of any karma, liberation or spiritual realization is the result of any karma, that cannot be permanent. This is Advaiti's view. But in RāMāNUJā system, no. This is the natural effect of meditation, puja and service done with great devotion to the Lord. So this is one thing. Of course, there are many other important ideas in the coming context. So, and also RāMāNUJā has got some other very important and very rational ideas you find. For example, RāMāNUJācārya makes an important point. A person who practices jnana-nishtha or meditation without devotion may face some very serious problem. And this is a very, very important point that RāMāNUJācārya says. So, I can just let me, if it is there. Avinasta papatteya ajintakaranaha atmajnanasya pravutto vishaya pravanaha atmani etc. So RāMāNUJā makes one important point, that a person whose mind is naturally confused or mind is full of different tendencies and impressions and vrittis. If that person practices any kind of meditation, any kind of deep contemplation, without doing service and without focusing on the Purushottama, on Sriman Narayana, the God idea, Ishta, let's say Ishtādvaita. So that means no service, no karma yoga, and no devotion. Suppose that person, if he meditates, what happens? It can be dangerous. Why? Because a person whose mind is not yet ready for meditation, due to a large number of mutually contradictory and mutually conflicting samskaras and vasanas, if he doesn't have a sense of devotion to one higher ideal, and if he is not engaged in any kind of spiritual activity, and if he tries to meditate, it can be dangerous, it can be problematic. So, there are two things to remember. First, you should think, contemplate on some divine person and pray for grace, God's grace. And simultaneously, or at least along with that, or as an alternative, you should do kainkaryam, you should do some seva work. If we keep doing some noble activity, some unselfish activity, that is what is called sadhana or spiritual discipline. But cleaning the shrine in a temple or doing some service to people who are going to a holy place, let's say pilgrims, and as pilgrims, you try to clean the place. You find in many Indian traditions like Sikhism, they give a lot of importance to cleaning the place, doing seva, doing service in holy places. Because by doing that, you are spiritually evolving. We may not be aware of this. Without our being aware of, there are many things happening in the mind. When we do something wrong without being aware of it or with full awareness, it actually causes our mind to go down. On the other hand, if we keep doing some noble activity, either distributing food, as many great Indian spiritual traditions give a lot of emphasis on, what you call annadanam, distributing food, hospitality. They go to pilgrim places, they distribute, let's say, winter clothing, Kali, Kambliwala, if you can see that in the Himalayan pilgrim centers, there are people who do that. It is done, they may not be doing much meditation, really speaking. By doing this, you find, without their being aware of it, perfectly they are aware of it, they know this works, mind is evolving. So, one can never be a bad person if he keeps doing good things all the time. That is one. And the second one is doing some spiritual discipline, like meditating or practicing in devotional singing. This also will result in the gradual ascent, evolution of the human mind. It means a lot of fresh vrittis and samskaras are generated, which help us to transcend the level of worldly empirical desires and fascinations. So that's why RāMānuja says in one context, evam mayi aviniveshya manaha swayatna gauravena indriya jaye pravutto vinashto bhavati. So somebody, a person without, who has not placed his mind on the Lord, who is not contemplating on the Lord, you see, from mai aviniveshya manaha, without a person who has not kept his mind, not dedicated his mind towards the Lord, to spiritual thoughts, let us say, soyatna gauravena, it means lot of strong faith He's very proud. I can achieve great things. Indriya pravurtaha. He is very proud. Well, I can control everything. Without any humility, without showing any humble service, and without contemplating on the Lord. What happens? Viśiṣṭō bhavati. He will be lost. This what happens is people face problems in meditation. Actually, Ramanuja is revealing a great spiritual truth in these lines. These are precious instructions for spiritual seekers. Those who try to meditate when their mind is not ready, with a lot of confused thinking, and they are very proud of their ability to meditate and to make progress in spiritual life. That is why Soyatna Gauravena, they are very proud of their own ability to work hard. Indriya Jaya Pravurtaha, and they are trying to control their senses, trying to meditate. What happens? Viśiṣṭō bhavati. That person gets lost. Anirastha Vishaya Anuragasyahi Mayi Aniveshita Manasa Indriyani, etc. He says, somebody who has not given his mind to the Lord, that person, he gets into spiritual trouble. It's a very, very remarkable statement. Of course, in the Yoga Sutra, you find many such ideas. So first, our mind should be ready, because when we engage in some spiritual activities, or when we engage in some spiritual disciplines, yamas and niyamas become automatically generated in the mental system. It's an unconscious development that happens in the mental system. If any person who keeps doing good things may not know anything about spirituality, but just doing good things, if you find unconsciously yamas and niyamas, ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, parigraha, shaucha, santosha, tapasya, adhyaya, pradhana, yamas and niyamas get automatically generated in that devotee's, in that person's mind. He may be even an agnostic, he may be an atheist. Still, what we normally call yamas and niyamas, non-violence, truthfulness, non-possessiveness, non-stealing, contentment, purity of life, all these qualities become automatically generated. And then slowly that person will start thinking, well, is there something beyond this world? And slowly you find he will start his search for some higher truth. That may make him a devotee, or that may make him a spiritual philosopher. But without that, if a person tries to practice this, I have seen it can be problematic. I have seen in some cases, of course, should not mention, but still it's an important thing, so I should not avoid mentioning that. People who sometimes come to the temples of worship, places of worship, they sit there straight like a gymnast with all muscles are flexible muscle, with a grim expression on their face, which shows that they are actually fighting with somebody. The somebody is their own mind actually. You can find, no, I won't get up. Because the mind is not willing to cooperate. Okay, come on and meditate, you're fine. The mind tells, no, get up. Because mind is boiling. If the person goes and reads a newspaper, he is absolutely peaceful. But when he sits somewhere, mind is not cooperating, but he has strong determination. That is so Gauravena, as RāMāNUJā says. He will, no, I'm capable of controlling my mind. So he sits there with a grim expression. Muscles are bulging muscles. Actually, if you meditate, you should be relaxed. But this person is actually fighting, So give an example. And they normally face either headache, confusion, or in some cases, unfortunately, even delusions. This happens. So RāMāNUJA's books contain some very wonderful ideas. But he is very particular about one point, that is, Jnananishṭha and bhakti minus devotion to God will not work and cannot work. And he himself says, Yadi sarvam karma parityajya kevalam jnananishtham adhikaroshi tarhi akarmanaste jnananishthasya jnananishthobadhikarini Sharira yatra api na setsyati. You can find very similar lines in Shankaracharya's commentary on the same verse that he got means. That is, Sharira yatra means even carrying on this body. If you give up your duty due to your own arrogance, no, I will not do my duty, then you will not be able to physically even survive in this world. So Ramanuja himself says, Idi sarvam karma parityajya. If somebody abandons, gives up all work and engages in jnananishta alone, without, of course, any real devotion, and devotion should express in the form of contemplating on the Lord. We call it Purushottama Dhyana. Then what happens? You won't be able to even maintain your body. Sharira yatra api na sirsiti. Then he says, Yavar sadhana samapti sharira dharanam cha avasyam karyam. So, at least you have to continue carrying a healthy body. You should take care of your body and keep it strong and healthy. At least till you reach the goal of all spiritual disciplines. So that's why, and of course, in the commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, Ramanuja quotes Ahar Shuddho, Sattva Shuddho, Drupasmati, all the Chandogya Upanishad mantras, he quotes very, very liberally. So you find in Ramanuja's commentaries contain some very wonderful ideas. But you have to keep in mind, Ramanuja considers that any spiritual discipline, whether it is jnananistha or yoga, Patanjali yoga disciplines, they will never be effective without service to the Lord and without contemplating on the Lord, without doing some worship or spiritual disciplines. It's a very, very important point. Remember, of course, that's why even mantras in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which are obviously Advaitic, with a strong Advaitic leaning, Ramanuja will turn it in the direction of Viśiṣṭādvaita. Ye prithivyam tishtan prithivyam antaraha ye prithivī naveda yesi prithivī shariram ye prithivyam antaro yamayadi sa atma antaryami amrita. Is famous mantra in the Antaryami Brahmana, one of the most well-known sections of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Antaryami Brahmana is one of the most well-known celebrated portions. He says, the one who dwells on this earth, but is within it, but the earth doesn't know it, but whose body is this earth, and who restrains and governs it as Antaryami dwelling within. That is the Antaryami inner controller. And that Antaryami is yourself, your Atman. Purely Advaitic. But Ramanuja will tell you, it is true, but that Antaryami is the Supreme Narayana, Sriman Narayana. And all these different living beings, jivas, and all the objects in the empirical world, that is Achit, jivas are Chit, and all the living beings are Achit. They all constitute parts and evolutes of the Sriman Narayana. Just like Sutre Manigana Iva, that is a statement in the Matta Paradaram Nikinjidasti Dhananjaya, my Sarvamidam Prodam Sutre Manigana Iva. Suppose you have a garland, you may not be able to see the threads. You see only the pearls. Or if you are making a garland of flowers, the flowers are dependent upon the thread on which they are strung. The pearls need a thread to keep them in place. Like that, the entire empirical world phenomena, Achit, and also all the living beings, Chit. They're all are like pearls which are strung together in a garland of pearls. That's the RāMāNUJA system. That is Antaryami Amata. So anyway, that's why he says, even statement like Sarvam Khalidam Brahma, he called it Manase Vedamatmavyam, etc. These are very, very Neha Nanasti Kinchana. All these statements you find in the Chandogya Upanishad. Sarvam Khalidam Brahma, everything is Brahman. Everything is Brahman because Brahman as Sriman Narayana is Antaryami, is indweller in Sarvam, in everything in this world. And then, of course, this is Manase Vedamatmavyam. Neha Nanasti Kinchana. So, this is from Kathopanishad, Krishna Yajurveda. So, Manasa eva Atmavyam. So, this spiritual truth can be realized only by mind. But what kind of mind? That mind should be pure, refined, fully made ready and prepared through spiritual disciplines, including service to the Lord, and also by worshipping the Lord, meditating on the Lord. By this mind becomes pure. But in Advaita system, the mind becomes pure when mind is completely free from all vasanas, samskaras and vrittis. Through karmanishta, karma yoga, mind becomes ready. So karmanishta tu karmanishta tu न स्वातंत्र्येण पुरुषार्थ हेतु कर्मनिष्ठा तो न स्वातंत्र्येण पुरुषार्थ हेतु कर्मनिष्ठा or karma yoga cannot independently lead you to purushartha. That means the highest spiritual realization. Jnananishta to स्वातंत्र्येण पुरुषार्थ हेतु अन्यान अपेक्षा. Jnananishami, that is Aham Brahmasmi, the Mahavakya. When you get instruction from Guru Tattwamasi, then you go through Anusandhana and Manana, that is Prajnanam Brahma, Yamatma Brahma, etc. Finally you realize Aham Brahmasmi, that experience comes. And beyond that Aham Brahmasmi Vakya, there is a real anubhuti or experience. That's how a person attains moksha in Advaita. In the RāMāNUJA system, through karmas, through rituals, through seva, service activities, mind becomes purified, and that mind eventually becomes an instrument for reaching prapatti, sharanagati, the highest devotion. And then one realizes the Supreme Person. This is the RāMāNUJA system. Anyway, so of course there are important statements in the other important works here. For example, in the Sri Bhashyam, Swarupa Nirupana Dharma Shabdahi Dharma Mukhena Swarupamabi Pratipadayanti Tathahi Sutrakaraha Tad Gunasarittvatu Tad Vyapateshaka Prajna. This is Brahma Sutra. It is from the second chapter, third pada, 29th. Yavad Atma Bhava Nityatvacha Nadoshaha, etc. So RāMāNUJācārya says, Brahma Shabdena Sabhavado Nirasta Nihila Dosho Anavatika Adishaya Asankheya Kalyana Guna Gana Purushottama Abhidhiyade. So what is Brahman according to RāMāNUJA? We already explained this in very briefly, but we are going to explain this more elaborately because it's very important. So what is Brahman according to RāMāNUJA? What is the highest supreme truth? The highest supreme truth is nothing but the supreme reality, who is the totality of all imaginable, conceivable, auspicious qualities. Anavadhika, Adishaya, Sankheya. So, innumerable, absolutely wonderful and manifold kinds of auspicious qualities and greatness, aspects of greatness. That is Brahman, and it is that RāMāNUJā says, Nirasta Nikhila Dosha. That is Sri Bhashya. Nirasta Nikhila Dosha. It is devoid of, free from any kind of inauspicious aspects, free from any kind of drawback. So if you can think of God as the totality of all that is most wonderful, most innumerable, auspicious qualities, aspects of greatness, the question arises, we discussed sometime earlier, how do you explain the unpleasant aspects, the unpleasant or darker realities of the world, which cannot wish them away? We cannot say they do not exist. Certainly there are things that we wish rather they did not exist. I think RāMāNUJA system doesn't give a very logical answer. Of course, remember, they don't actually accept the theory of evil as found in the some Abrahamic theological traditions, where you have to invent a devil or a Beelzebub or some kind of inauspicious entity. It's almost a close rival to God, and who is actually trying to tempt God's devotees away from God, and actually is trying to create his own world. He wants his own followers. Devil also wants people around him, people who follow him, That's Milton's Paradise Lost, one can read in a very classical literary attempt to explain this. So, RāMāNUJA doesn't, he's not very particular about it. I don't think he develops a theology around the unpleasant reality. But anyway, he emphasizes the idea of God as the embodiment of the essence of. That he says, Svabhavataha means by his very nature. So he cannot say these are qualities of God. Of course, for want of better expression, problem of vocabulary, we may say God has got all these qualities. But that is actually, God is these qualities themselves, Svabhavataha. Inherently, God is possessed of all these auspicious qualities, which are innumerable, asankhya, which cannot be counted, which is absolutely astounding, adishaya, and of different types, anavadhika, etc. Brihutvam cha surupena gunaischa yatra anavadhika adishayam so sahasya mukhyarthaka. So brihutvam, so surupena gunaischa yatra anavadhika adishayam. So, one, of course, the definition of Brahman is brihutva brahmanatva. It itself is omnipresent, it's great, beyond human imagination. And also, if you meditate on the Brahman, you also become great. Here, greatness is because of these innumerable auspicious qualities that Brahman possesses. So, such as Sarveshwareva, and the Supreme God Himself. Ataha Brahmashabdaha Traiva Mukhyavruttaha Tasma Anyatra Tadguna Lesha Yoga the Upacharika Anegartha Kalpana Yoga Bhagavat Shabdavada. So these are the important things that RāMāNUJA mentions. Okay, we already explained this. Now we can have interaction. We'll continue this discussion from where we left today, because RāMāNUJA's own interpretation of Brahman is very, very important, because Tattvatraya means the absolute reality or God, and the Chit, the living beings, which are effulgent, which are parts of Srimanarayana, Brahman, Saguna Brahman, and also the Achit, the empirical phenomenal world and different objects. So, we'll continue this discussion. You are most welcome with your questions. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
David, please proceed.
Yeah.
Swami.
Yeah.
Oops. My question is, in my field, in the field of psychology,
Yeah.
mindfulness meditation is often, it's a very common, nowadays, very common to teach it, but they don't teach, like I think if it came, they for them it comes from Buddhism, you know, but they don't teach the Eightfold Path, they teach the One-Fold path, you know, just the mindfulness. They don't talk about ethics or morality, I mean, zero. Does that mean that it's more dangerous than not?
Yeah, one blessing of this modern practice of mindfulness meditation is it doesn't go very deep. It's very good as a relaxation technique. It is not preached or taught as a path to realize some supreme spiritual goal. It's a relaxation technique. The Sanskrit term is Smriti Upasthana Sutram, and the Pali original I think it's come in the Khuddaka Nikaya. It is Sati-Upattana Sutta. Sati-Upattana Sutta. It is Pali Sati-Upattana Sutta. Smriti Upasthana Sutram. There is a Mahasati-Upattana Sutta and Sati-Upattana Sutta. The larger version meant for the laity is Mahasati-Upattana Sutta, and for bhikkhus, Buddha's discourse, is called Sati-Upattana Sutta, briefer one. So there, I think maybe in ancient times, Buddhist monks and Buddhist laity who practiced this, certainly they had great emphasis on some very important ethical, moral values and disciplines. Absolutely no doubt about it, because essentially they were people who practiced yamas and niyamas, and ahimsa, satya, all they practiced. You can find the great Buddhists of ancient times. But in today's world, it is taught more as a very useful, very helpful relaxation technique. It certainly helps you. That is also true of transcendental meditation, TM. I have seen in India, people do a lot, they feel a lot of relaxation. That's good, absolutely. In its real form, it is a way of reaching to, a state when you are already established in perpetual awareness, but without being attached. So, you are established in smriti, in perpetual awareness, but you are detached, you are not attached to anything. So, this happens as part of Buddhist meditation techniques. So, but they don't go very deep into that, If a person practices for long hours, this at midnight and all that, that can be problematic. That's all. Remember, we should never get away with the impression that meditation is dangerous. Absolutely no, not at all. Meditation is certainly not dangerous, never. The point is, what Ramanuja talks about is the people who practice, who takes to all these disciplines without any moral values, they will be naturally disturbed by their own thoughts, by their own mind, when they practice meditation for a very long time. But in normal, mindfulness meditation, number of people gathered, very good music, very good ambience, and so they want to relax. So it really happens, that is very helpful and is absolutely wonderful. And Buddhism has made things very, very simple. That's also one way of doing a great service to society, humanity. Taking meditation from its exotic, very profound, spiritual, theological, religious practice level to simple relaxation exercise. Certainly good. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Swami.
Yeah, thank you.
David, please go ahead.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Thank you. Swami, I'm kind of just building on what David said. If meditation is untethered to any godliness or spiritual goals? Isn't it just like calisthenics? It's just a way to make an individual more powerful by a relaxation technique to achieve whatever good or bad ends that may come from that? Or is there some kind of intrinsic goal, that something inherently good about the process, even if it's not tethered to something ethical or God-seeking?
No, that's true. Meditation does have an inherent intrinsic value and usefulness. Whether you connect it with any religious tradition or even spiritual tradition or not, it has a value. Because for some time in meditation, you try to take yourself away from you. I hope you explain. We are taking ourselves away from our own mind. If anyone continues this practice, you find you'll be able to observe your own thought currents if mindfulness is done properly. We will be able to detach ourselves from our own mind. And this happens in Buddhist meditation. We sometimes we are able to witness, observe how thoughts and emotions and feelings emerge in our mind, how they move and how they subside, and again fresh thoughts and come to the mind. We are observing because we are detaching ourselves from our thoughts. We cannot observe something unless we are apart from it. We are different from it. I cannot observe a chair if chair and I are the same. So normally in our life, we identify ourselves with our emotions and feelings. There is no difference. We closely identify ourselves with our anger, with our hatred, with our hunger, with our thirst, happiness and unhappiness. We identify ourselves with what happens in our mind, emotions and feelings. In any kind of meditative practice, when you sit in a relaxed mood, you suddenly start observing mentally so many thoughts and emotions and feelings emerging in your mind. Slowly you are able to observe, you become aware of what is happening in your mind. When you become aware of it, you are detaching yourself from them. And when you detach yourself from those emotions, you feel relaxation. The more one can detach our mind from its vagaries, the more we will be able to feel this relaxation. Because to that extent, we are de-identifying ourselves with our emotions and feelings. Oh, I am getting angry right now. I should not be angry. Absolutely stupid to get angry. When you think that you become less angry, really. It happens simultaneously together. I am becoming somebody who says, well, I am becoming fearful. There is no point, absolutely irrational. I am becoming unnecessarily worried about something. When you become aware of the fact that you are getting worried about certain things without any reason, slowly you become less worried, because you are creating a gap between you and your worry. Your worry becomes your object, the object you are observing. You become the subject, your worry becomes the object. So a gap is created between the two. And if you can widen this gap, we become more relaxed. So mindfulness actually works like this. I have not yet come across, not participated in any of the mindfulness sessions, but frequently people come to Vedanta Society, those who give mindfulness training in different places, including in medical institutions. They come, they discuss these things. I am giving my views based on the text Mahasati Upatana Sutta. I gave a retreat, I think with about 7 or 8 classes a few years ago before COVID, on the Satyupattana Sutta, in this, the Pali canonical work in the new temple. There's some you may be able to find it in the YouTube old videos. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. But I should add something more, very important. You raised a very, very important subject. The ultimate goal is to reach the state of Tathagata, Buddhahood. Even mindfulness is designed to take you to Buddhahood. That's a long distance. But still, even the beginner will feel a great relaxation. Even a small little bit of Buddhahood is a very relaxing experience. Okay, thank you for the question. Yeah.
David, are you following up with something? I saw your lips moving.
Yeah.
No, okay. Mark, I think you're next.
Yeah.
If you're ready.
Okay, I can't start my video, but I'll go ahead and ask the question.
Yeah.
Swamiji,
Yeah.
you were talking about Ramanuja sidestepping the issue of evil or the unpleasant things that happen in the world. I'd like to know what Advaita or Vedanta's perspective is on the topic of evil or the unpleasant things that happen.
Yeah.
We were talking about all of the
Yeah.
auspicious qualities of God, but then we have all these unpleasant things that happen, and then that are called evil.
Yeah.
What is Advaita's perspective on this?
Yeah. Now, Advaita, I shall explain this. Advaitins consider that even if you define God just as the totality of all that is auspicious, even that definition is a limitation to the supreme reality. Any definition is a limitation. It's like you're putting a frame, like a photo, covered with a frame on all the four sides. So a definition is always a limitation. So a definition you cannot define anything that is infinite. Definition implies finitude. So that's the real epistemological reason. But then coming to subject, Advaitins also do not develop a very, very systematic theory of error as such. Though they approach the theory of error, not theory of evil. What they say, it is due to ignorance that a person becomes evil or wrong. Ignorance. Due to the fact that he or she is not able to realize his real Swarupa, his real entity, that is the all-pervading divine reality. And again, it takes us beyond both good and bad. That's an important thing. When you say that Brahman cannot be defined as the totality of all that is good, it doesn't mean Brahman is bad. It means it beyond any kind of equation, any kind of definition, any kind of verbalization. This is called Pancha Shabda Pravritti. Means 5 types of verbalization. And Brahman is Pancha Shabda Pravritti Nirodha. Sarva Pramana Avadhi, beyond all epistemological tools. 5 conditions of verbalization in Vedanta. Jati, Guna, Karma, Sambandha, Dravya means, suppose you want to define something, you want to describe something, it should belong to a particular category of species. You can say it's an animal species, human beings, and so on. Or like karma, you can define a person. He is a musician, he sings, he is a gardener, he does gardening. So you are defining him on the basis of what he does. Sambandha, relationship. You can say he is my friend or my brother or something you can say. So you are defining, you are describing a person on the basis of some relationship. Guna, you can say it's a white flower, red flower, green flower, a blue flower. These colors are different gunas of these flowers. So dravya means something which is obvious. It's like a sun or the moon. So it is quite obvious. So the point is, you cannot describe or define Brahman in any of these 5 categories. So it is beyond everything. That was what Master Eckhart was trying to reach when he said that even to define God as, even define the Supreme Reality in terms of Holy Trinity is a limitation. He did not deny Holy Trinity. He only said that you cannot define the reality even as in terms of Holy Trinity. To call God as a name is a limitation. But remember, this systematic thought was not so well developed in that hierarchy, which of course, coming from Augustine, 5th century onwards, any deviation from Augustinian thought would have been problematic for any philosopher of those times. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sanjay, you're next.
Namaste, Swamiji.
Yeah.
Thank you. Today's was a wonderful session. Clarified a lot. My question is around the karma-nishtha and jnana-nishtha that you mentioned. And so 2 parts are related. One is there anyone who has gone with the karma-nishtha that RāMANUJA'Acharya describes and later on got into the Advaita realization? You have always mentioned that Advaita transcends Viśiṣṭādvaita. That's one question. So related to that is there a mainstream path like Karma Yoga first and then Bhakti Yoga? Is there a path you would recommend for the masses in general? Although each person's path is unique. That's my question.
The word jnana-nishtha is used by RāMANUJA. But RāMANUJA's implication of jnana-nishtha is different from Shankaracharya's jnana-nishtha. That's an important thing. So when Shankaracharya talks about jnana-nishtha, he's talking about vichara and its ultimate goal, the Jiva Brahmaikyam. That's what he's implying. But RāMANUJA's system, it is not that. It is not jnana. He is actually referring to, is a vague reference to Advaita. He considers Advaita to be a bit limited. But anyway, that's one thing. Second question that you mentioned, what's the second question?
Is there a mainstream path that
Oh yeah,
recommends for people?
That's true. Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Now the point is, for any spiritual seeker, the first path, the kindergarten of spiritual evolution is karma yoga. For anyone, because giving up karma is never allowed or recommended in any of the spiritual traditions. So doing one's duty is very important. That's why in the RāMANUJA's commentary and Shankara's commentary are the same. Sharira yatra pichate, nam prasiddheda karmanaka. This is, RāMANUJA says, even for your physical sustenance, it will be difficult for you to continue your physical sustenance if you don't do your duty. So, it is impossible for anyone to artificially, to forcefully, to just give up karma. I don't want to do it. Impossible. Now the question arises, then what about karma yoga? A person who is engaged in different activities, the Sraudha karmas, Smartha karmas, the rituals, or your everyday Laugika karmas, mean everyday activities. All these activities can be done, can be performed as karma yoga. But there, when it comes to karma yoga, RāMANUJA will bring his belief, his strong orientation to God. So Karma Yoga should be an act of worship, seva, service to the Lord, which also includes seva and service to society, parents, everything. So Ramanuja brings a Saguna Sakara Ishvara into this Karma Yoga aspect. In Shankaracharya's system, as Gita says, even if you do karma without any desire for results, for the good of the world, like Buddha did, not thinking about God, that's also a Karma Yoga. That Karma Yoga, according to Advaita system, will make your mind free, empty of all vrittis, vasana, samskaras, all karmic blocks, all andarayas, we call in Yoga Sutras. Vyadhisthana, etc., alasya, samsya, etc. These are actually different kinds of obstacles, karmic blocks. All these will be dismantled as you progress along the path of Karma Yoga, doing everything without any selfish motive. Because they will neutralize the bad effects of previous actions and they will not generate any fresh karmic blocks. Old karmic blocks will be dismantled and there will be no fresh, no karmic blocks because you are doing without any desire. So what happens? Such a person will reach a state of spiritual evolution called Chitta Shuddhi, purity of mind. Now, how do you recognize a man who has reached this state? You find that he's always looking for something transcendental. The desire to look for something transcendental, not of this world. Either you may be meditating, you may be continuously doing everything for others. Along with that, you also will have a natural urge for some higher spiritual principle. That's actually the indication that your mind is getting more and more purified. Mind is not purified. Always will be thinking, how can I make some extra dollars so I can put a little more money in the bank, I can buy a bigger car, bigger home, a bigger job. That will be the way mind will be functioning. But when our mind is free, you may get all the best things of this world, but you won't be attached. You will be striving all the time for those. You may have them, but you won't take them very seriously. So that state, when it gets intensified, it leads to moksha. This is Shankara's system. In Ramanuja's system, moksha is there. Moksha is ayujya. Going to Vishnu Loka, being like Vishnu Sarupya, Salokya, Samipya, everything is there. That's true. But because it is closely it is closely linked to the road you have walked, the path you have followed. What is the path? You do service in the temple. Ramanuja himself was asked by one of his gurus, early teachers, to practice Tirtha Kaigaryam in Sriranganatha temple. When taking water from the well, and he was a very sincere, very devoted, very, very focused karma yogi. All that he did with great devotion. And that actually made his mind ready for, his mind became so completely pure, so the devotion, bhakti, everything became, reached the fulfillment in Ramanuja system. So that's it. And one point that I want to mention, why Ramanuja emphasizes the importance of karma yoga, some seva, some good charitable activity, some noble activity, some unselfish activity, along with meditation, puja, to a Saguna Ishvara. Why it is very important? Actually, it is really dangerous for a person who is fully engaged in worldly activities, lot of greed, lot of anger, lot of ambition, working 15 hours, 16 hours, 17 hours a day, and come home in the evening, maybe at 10 o'clock at night, and meditate. Very dangerous. Because that mind is not ready to meditate. First of all, if he tries, blissfully his mind will not allow him to meditate. He may get up from his meditation seat and open a TV. Actually, it will save him. But if he persists, he will have a lot of delusions and hallucinations. He will say, I had a vision. I myself, I don't want to mention, I have met many people. Say Kundalini is reaching Sahasrara, and they had a vision of Shiva. Shiva told, one person told me, Shiva told him, no, you should take care of the world. All this, if you tell that person is a hallucination, delusions of grandeur, one of the problems, delusions of grandeur is inevitable for such persons. Those who, Ramanuja says, Swa Gauravena means by proud of his own ability. So Yatna Gauravena. I can do everything myself. That strong determination is certainly a great help for every spiritual seeker, but should not be without God's help, without anybody's help, I shall become a Buddha. That is a direct road leading to craziness and delusions. I shall become a Buddha in a month of practice. Absolutely crazy. Absolutely the wrong path to take. That happens. That's why Ramanuja says, Soyatna Gauravena. And he says, Vinashto Bhavati. That person gets lost mentally. All the delusions and hallucinations that you come across, and this happens only to people who do extreme practices. Otherwise, it doesn't bother. If a person prays and meditates every day evening, half an hour, absolutely no problem. It's helpful actually. But people who takes to extreme limits, that's what Ramanuja may be implying, It's a fact. You heard of Swami Shivanandaji, Rishikesh Shivanandaji, when he first started his classes. He used to give caution to practitioners, especially those who should not do too much of pranayama. It should be slowly, stage by stage, one should evolve. Okay, thank you for the question. Yeah.
Thank you, Shubhendra. You're next. Unmute yourself, please. We can't hear you yet.
We can't hear.
Pranam Swamiji.
Yeah, namaskar.
You talked about meditation. I wanted to know what are your thoughts about Vipassana? Is it just for relaxation technique or a path to deeper spiritual realization?
I have not made a very close study of that system of meditation. I know a little bit, but I am not in a position to give my opinion about this because I am not competent to give an opinion because I have not made a close study of the subject. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was the last question I see, Maharaj.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you very much for those questions and also for the active discussion. Okay, we'll continue our class next Sunday. Thank you. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Pranamastu. Thank you, Namaskar.
Recording stopped.
Namaskar, Namaskar, Namaskar.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Namaskar, Namaskar, Namaskar.